My father was a minister and my mom was a dental hygienist, both of whom left their countries under duress. My father from the Cuban Revolution, and my mother was an orphan in Colombia. Her father was like killed at the beginning of La Violencia, which was their revolution, kind of their civil war. Anyway, they were kind of people who, while they really enjoyed classical music, for them it was like a very elite thing and kind of a fancy thing that they thought their child could go into, and I think that's kind of true. But we were always surrounded by kind of more humble people. And again, my father was a minister in the Latin church and the Hispanic church, and dishwashers, people who had just come over. And I say that because for me, I felt very privileged from my parents to have gotten a good education and go to Manhattan School of Music and study violin and then Carnegie Mellon and then Yale. And that felt great. And I think at a certain moment in time, maybe I even kind of pretended to myself like I could be a part of this aristocratic American class or something like that. But it occurred to me, obviously over the years that was like a form of perhaps self-hate. And also,
Sure.
yeah, it just didn't honor my family story, and so I guess that became a problem for me. Yeah, that became a problem for me with classical music in general, and maybe that's why I didn't pursue it in kind of the more traditional sense, is that I just couldn't completely identify myself with it, as beautiful as it is. So, I felt like with Manu, I had to figure out a way to tackle this issue. And so my way to tackle it was to look into Latin American music, look into Latin American folk music,
Wow.
figure out what I could bring to the performance practice of the violin that both honored my training as a classical, person, but also honored this story and connected the dots. Yeah, so I think with Manu, I started delving into my mother's story, particularly like the kind of vibe and ambience afforded through the vistage of the Andean mountains in Colombia. I think when I finally came to La Marea, I kind of wanted to expand out and take some of that style that I had created in Manu and blow it out into something that could create larger compositional forms, get more experimental in the composition itself, not just focused on the playing. One of the things that I did in Manu is kind of like, in a funny way, kind of focus on articulations. Like each piece was much shorter and they were, in a way, kind of etudes or short songs, if you will. And I was able to focus on like little different styles, like pieces would focus on pizzicato, for example, or, like playing like a guitar or different kind of arco articulations. And that felt really good in Manu. And then for this, I went into a much more experimental place.